Hello. So this video is definitely not going to be like anything I've ever posted on here just because, well, it isn't really random talk about stuff that no one really cares about. And whether you care about this or not, it's probably something you need to hear. And the main reason I'm posting this video is because at the beginning of the month, I gave my testimony to my youth group and only like 20 of them could show up, which was really unfortunate just because of all the stuff going on with summer. But I've gotten like 10 or more people coming up to me saying, "Oh my goodness, I wish I could have heard it," or "You should have recorded it," or and I've also had almost 10 people who were there tell me it like was amazing and that it even changed their life. So I I just thought that I would post my testimony on here of me saying it, which I really hope is beneficial, not just to the people who missed it, but to anyone else who's just randomly watching this, that if you're going through what I've gone through, that this will help you in some way. Now, just a few things first. I do not know what YouTube does for long videos. I don't know the longest video I've posted. I'm sure it's nowhere near this long, just because of my testimony being so lengthy. But just in case YouTube doesn't let me upload a really long video, there may be multiple parts. So look out for that. And second thing, I have notes that I used when I did it in my youth group, which I'm going to use for this. So if I'm constantly looking down, don't don't think it. I don't know what you're supposed to think, but just that's what I'm looking at. So since this is going to take a while, let's begin. So just in case you don't know me and you're not watching this because you know me, my name is Jay. I am 20 years old and I am a junior at North Central in Minneapolis, which I love that school. But to my testimony, now, at the age of 4 or 5, my family was still going to this Apostolic Bible Church in St. Paul, and at this time, obviously at 4 or 5, you weren't really knowledgeable about many God things. You know who God is, but it isn't like you know a lot. But I remember this guy came in who was prophesying over people, and he came up to me, and I remember him telling me that I was going to be a leader of like a lot of people. And to me, that was really hard to believe. Not necessarily then, but just throughout my life, just because of a lot of the stuff I'm going to be telling you. So, I was born December 17th, 1991. And to say that I had a hard birth would have been pretty much an extreme understatement because I was born jaundice, which means that your skin's all yellow. I had my umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and I had a broken collarbone, and that's just to name a few things. So, to say that it wasn't an easy birth may not be the right thing to say. Um, that just was kind of a I don't know the words, I'm not good at anything, but, um, just a precursor, I guess, of the next few years of my life, because for about the first 4 years of my life, I had a really hard time doing anything because as kids, especially being a boy, basically all you want to do is run around. Like you have just all this energy as kids. I don't know why. I don't know what kids eat or do, but you just want to run around. And I was no exception. So I'd want to run around. But the thing is, while all these kids had like endless energy and just could run, 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 I would be able to run for maybe 20 seconds or somewhere in that range, and then I'd have to stop and like take gasping breaths because I just couldn't breathe, and it was to the point where it was very noticeable for people watching. And my neighbor lady went up to my parents and said to me that, sorry, that she asked if I had asthma just because I would stop so frequently and not be able to breathe, and my parents said no, but that's definitely something for parents to be concerned about if other people are noticing it. So my parents took me to the doctor and told the doctors to run as many tests as they could. and the doctors did as such. And what the doctors found is that I actually had a vascular ring around my breathing tube, which basically what that means is I have a definition. A vascular ring is an abnormal formation of the aorta, the large artery that carries blood from the heart to the rest of the body. It is a congenital problem, meaning it is present at birth. So basically, this needed to be taken care of. So at the age of 4, I needed to have my first heart surgery. And so what was basically going on is the vascular ring was around my breathing tube, like pinching it. So when your breathing tube's supposed to be about this big, mine was about like this. So I could like barely breathe. And when you exercise, it obviously like closes more, and it's just odd. And since I couldn't really exercise a lot, I was still eating because kids may exercise a ton, but they also eat a lot. And I was doing that, so I was growing a lot. So I was getting bigger and like not trying to use this word, but fatter. And it was because of that. And so what they did for the surgery is they cut open my side. I have like a really, really, really long cut over here. That they cut open my side. Whoa, Nelly. They cut open my side and they opened up my rib cage and they moved my lung. They actually took it out and deflated it. And then they cut the ring around my tube, and from my parents' words, it was like cutting a guitar string, which, if that helps you at all, okay. So that supposedly fixed everything. And at the age of 5 in 97, we moved to Iowa, which isn't that big of a deal. I hadn't started school. Yay, Iowa, corn. And I was not improving. I had continued chest pains, and I continued to grow in size, and my metabolism was way out of whack. So my parents were like, what the heck? Wasn't it supposed to be fixed? What's going on? So in 99, so a few years later, it took a few years to notice that it wasn't getting better. My parents took me to Des Moines, the doctors, and the doctors couldn't figure it out. So they actually sent me back to Minnesota where I was born to figure out what was wrong at the U of M, and because that's where the doctor recommended to go. And just by the surgeon calling my house and listening to me breathe over the phone, he could tell that I needed this other surgery called an aortopexy surgery, which wasn't the first surgery, but I needed that. So in March of 2000, we went up to Minneapolis to have that done. At this point, I was 8 years old. And when they went in there, it turns out that the first surgery actually wasn't done properly. So that's why nothing was happening. So instead of giving me the second surgery, the new one, I actually had 2 surgeries for that same problem. Yeah. So then, that was in March of 2000, and in August of 2000, my family moved back to Minnesota because of my dad's job. And I was in 3rd grade at the time, and I'd be starting at a new school, which, if you start at a new school, especially if you're not really the most talkative person like me, it's like terrifying. Because by 3rd grade, kids have normally made their friends, made their cliques, so it's kind of hard to make friends if you're not talkative, because kids normally just leave you alone. And so I definitely got the new kid treatment. And since I still needed the aortopexy surgery, in December of that year, I had it at the age of 9. And this was just basically they took chicken wire and pushed my chest out so my chest wouldn't be squeezing on my breathing tube and causing it to be crushed even though the ring was gone. So this fixed the problem. I improved, but I still am not 100%. Like, this is what you're supposed to be at, your breathing tube. This is what I was at, and I'm like halfway. So I'd still, if I run a lot, not be able to do a lot what other kids do, but it's obviously better than what it was. And even though, like, inside my problems were fixed, this was literally just the start of, like, all the rest of everything bad that was to come in my life. And so elementary school for me it was this point in life where when you look back, you could say it was difficult, but at the time you're just kind of like living in the moment. You don't really understand a lot. And I was told by a kid that I had boobs. I was made fun of for my faith by this person, but the only thing that kept me like together was the fact that there was this one girl there who stood up for me. And just to pause here, one point that I think needs to be made before I make any points later is that if you know someone who's getting made fun of like that, or even if you are the person making fun of them like that, first off, if you're the person making fun of, stop. You have no idea what you're doing to that person, and while you think that it's funny, it's not. Your friends don't find it funny. No one finds it funny. They just think you're a jerk. So just stop. And if you know someone getting picked on, you need to be this girl to them. You need to stand up against these people because it is so insanely hard being a new kid to a school who's already having physical problems and is getting made fun of like that. Like, to be honest, if it wasn't for this girl, I would have probably killed myself eventually throughout my life. Because who knows where this would have gone to. I could have been like harassed like even more severely, and you need to be this girl to someone that you know. Set aside, we can move on. Junior high for me was better than elementary school. It was where I finally started to just kind of grow as a person, and seventh grade especially was when I got my first like really good friend. And I want to talk about this friend for a second. This was a boy who went to my church at the time. So a lot of you probably don't know him. You would have at the time, obviously. And he was one of those kids that just by seeing him, you could tell he's like really popular. Just by the way he talks and acts, he thinks he's popular. But the thing that was different for me was the fact that he talked to me. Like I was a kid who had like three friends, and he was talking to me. And to me, that was really important to me, not because I felt popular, but because it made me feel special. And it was definitely something that really impacted me and made me feel better about myself. Um, except in what year would this be? I forget, like 2005. For spring break, we went to the Colorado. What did I just hear? Sorry. Blah, blah, blah. We went to the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, and for our youth group. And while we were there, one night, this friend, me, and this other random boy, I don't even know if he was with our church or not, were there, and the other boy was like, "Hey, let's go hang out with all the girls or whatever with the girls." I don't know. Naivety has its toll. But my friend said to this boy, "Well, we better leave Jay here because he'll scare all the girls away." And kind of like elementary school, at this time that didn't really affect me just because I was like, oh, he was probably just joking, or maybe that's what friends do, because I'd only had like one or two really good friends. So I didn't really know what friends did. Like maybe that's how they talk to each other. Do they kid around that much? And so it didn't really do anything for me. But the thing that I find really cool to this day is that my parents saw how bad of a friend he was and how much of a fair weather friend he was. And my mom actually prayed him out of my life, which was cool because like 2 months later, I found out that his family was leaving and going to California, which was actually, at the time, it was sad because it's like I'm losing my best friend, but overall it was good. And moving on to high school for me was really hard because this was the first time where I ever really started to look at myself and notice that people didn't think I was good enough. Because I finally looked in the mirror and saw I was overweight and noticed it and felt bad about it. Because it's kind of the first time you ever really think about yourself physically, like bad or good. So I dealt with depression a lot from that, and I never felt good enough. And just an example of how like stuff that happened to me kind of through that time. I had this friend, another friend story, in 10th grade, and we were in this really hard class together. Like honestly, you had to be like selected to be in this class, and I like barely got in. Actually, I didn't get in. That's a longer story, but all that aside, this is only a set timed video. But we would study for these tests together, and even though I'd still get like F's and D's, which not my best time, but um, we would still. He was like my friend, and he was, I guess, nice to me. But during this time, this would have been 2008. During this time, my family went on like our first big trip for spring break. We went down to the not Kalahari, Grand Cayman, down by Cuba, and it was amazing. We went there for 2 weeks, and I came back, and this kid didn't talk to me. It's like he found this opportunity of me being gone to cut off our friendship, and it was just stuff like that that kind of made me feel not good enough. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, you're my one good friend. Like, I'm the type of person who doesn't have like a lot of friends, but I have friends and I treat them like gold. Like, if you're my friend, you should find that to be a good thing because I don't normally have like tons of friends. Like, I have a lot of good acquaintances, but I don't consider people friends very easily. And it was like, you're like my one really good friend, and you just cut me off. What do I have now? And that time, around this time, was actually when I started getting into some really bad habits and bad stuff, which it's kind of hard to visualize this without a picture, but um, imagine a vase, like just a vase that has all these holes or cracks in it, mainly holes. And vases are normally used to hold stuff, obviously, mainly maybe flowers and water and stuff. Wow, that sounded detailed, but mainly flowers, and people put water in there. But if a hole's here, you can't fill the water past it, or else it'll just pour out the hole. And to you have to find something to patch those holes if you're ever going to get the water up there. And I would constantly try to find things to patch those holes in my life because I resembled that vase. I was broken in so many places, and I just needed to find things to patch these holes. And an example of something I used, which is very hard to talk about, is what I'm about to say. Now, at, I don't remember, 8th or ninth grade, I started YouTubing videos of stuff that isn't really stuff you should be watching. Like, none of it were like people naked, but it was stuff getting near that. And it's stuff that you should not be watching. It's very damaging on you, but it was just something that I started doing, and it became a habit for me. And that was just the start of it because I don't remember. It would be after the time I'm talking about right now, but I I remember being over at a friend's house, and I don't know where this friend was at the time, but I was on their computer, and I went on the computer, and I think I was looking at music or something, and I went to YouTube and I was probably going to YouTube, and I went in the URL thing to type in YouTube, and I went in there, and it showed like all the past sites that this person had been to, and one of them I didn't know what it was, and being like the curious kid I was, I guess, I clicked on it, and needless to really describe, it was pornography. And this wasn't a thing where I clicked on it and it went to like a page of stuff where I selected a video, or I went to a page of stuff where there were just pictures. This was like a full-on video. And this is coming from a kid who like barely even knew what sex was. Like just seeing it in action, like against your will, I was like scarred. I wanted to shut it off. I remember just being in this frantic, like, what is going on? Oh my goodness. But sadly, that point has changed my life so much because then later, when I'd want to watch these YouTube videos, a voice in my head, obviously Satan, would be saying to me, hey, why don't you go to the stuff you were watching at your friend's house or you saw at your friend's house? It's not like it's bad now. You've already seen it. You've already been damaged. Why don't you just do it? And so I started watching it, and that became a habit for me to do that. And it was never in a lustful way, but I would just do that because when I was watching it, Satan would always say to me, like, yeah, that's right. You are worthless. No woman is ever going to want you, like the people in this video. And obviously, I know that pornography is staged and it's not passionate, it's not out of love, it's for money, but it just, Satan would tell me all these things and I believed it. I would tell myself, I'm worthless, I'm unloved, this is as close to love as I'm ever going to see, because no girl will ever love me. And I told myself that on a daily basis. And every time I watched this, which wasn't daily, obviously, but in the times I would tell myself that, and it just for some reason made me feel better. And hello. Yes. You can leave. No, but it's I'm not going to keep going while you're down here. Lily. Oh. Yeah, sorry. My mom came down here to get Pops, and I don't necessarily talk well in front of, I don't know. I'd just rather not talk in front of people about this. Well, I guess I am, but hopefully you get my point. And the thing that um, was strange was that school was like the one place I shined, like academically, not socially, academically, and um, God had blessed me with that because physically I was extremely struggling. I couldn't run as fast as anyone else. From weight and my surgeries and stuff. I couldn't like make friends because I wasn't talkative. I was overweight, so people didn't like me, and I was struggling, but intellectually, I can talk. I was trying to shine, and luckily God gifted me in that, and I was sort of able to. And people, oh my goodness, my mom just left. And I was always reminded on how I could be used by people. Like people would constantly say, "Oh my goodness, you're so smart. God's gonna use you in such a great way." And I would just think, "Yeah, right. I'm worthless. Why would it matter how God's gonna use me if no one here wants me?" And that's just the stuff I continuously fed myself. Like at this point, I probably had like pretty close to no self-esteem. Like I wouldn't like hate on myself and ever like think about killing myself, but it was to the point where I would tell people, yeah, I've already told myself I'm not getting married because no one's ever gonna want me. I'm just worthless. The sad thing is doing well in school academically wasn't enough to ever make me feel like I was worth anything. Like for an example, in high school, I graduated fifth in my class out of like 450 people, and to some people that'd be like an amazing achievement. And I ended with a 4.35 GPA and 8 college classes, practically a whole year of college just out of the way. And to me, that didn't mean anything because I had hardly any friends. I had never had a girlfriend, and so I just felt worthless about myself. So if no friends wanted me and no girl wanted me, why does it matter? And I would just feed myself to that, so that never helped me. But in backtracking from graduation a little, 11th grade when I was 16 was the first time where that ever started to change a little. Because in 11th grade, I had my first really big crush. Now, I say crush, and I don't mean like looking at a girl and thinking, oh, she's cute, and then like 3 days like forgetting. This was like extreme crush, and I'm sure a lot of you know like what I mean. And I had liked girls, obviously, like I said, like small crushes, but this is the first girl I really liked. And I like remember talking to my mom about it because my mom knew this girl too. And I remember saying, I'm gonna ask this girl out. Like, I'm not talkative, but I'm gonna do it. And since I was getting out of my shell, uh, I decided to write it over email, which isn't really part of the story, but I'm pretty sure that probably had some effect to on her decision. Because I'm pretty sure girls don't like being talked to over email. But as I said, I wouldn't know. but as me, I probably wouldn't. But she had just broken up with her boyfriend, and I remember just reading the email like, oh my goodness, you're like a really good friend, and I just want to know if you would do me the honor of going out with me. And I remember her like obviously being flattered, I hope, and just saying that she was getting over her boyfriend and needed some time. So I was like, okay, that's not no, that's not yes, but that's something, and I'm going to hold on to that. And so to me, that was basically a yes. Like it's going to happen, but the timing of it is uncertain. So I remember going up to her almost every time I saw her and being like, "Oh, has it been enough time?" And I probably got really annoying. And I remember just saying no, no, no. And eventually, one of her friends came up and told me that she didn't want to go out with me anymore. And I was like, okay, whatever.